think it's going to convince some people who are sitting on the fence to say, well, I better buy now before it gets too much higher.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 45 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
Hello and welcome to episode number 4. I want to start with a big thanks to Dave and Colin from the band Mustard Plug for letting us use their song, Mr. Smiley. I think it really sets the right tone for all the exciting and fun interviews that we have lined up for you. This is our 4th episode, and our release pattern is designed to coincide with the RPOA annual conference, which is happening right here in Grand Rapids this Thursday through Sunday, February 25th through 28th of 2016. We are starting out this Monday with episode number 4, and then episode number 5 on Tuesday, and episode number 6 on Wednesday. Thursday is a special day because that's the first day of the conference. After that, you can expect a new episode every Monday, each one with an exciting and an informative interview, which I know you're going to really enjoy. Tom Koetsier is here today. Tom is an award-winning broker for Compass Realty Services, and he teaches the class on buying and selling rental property. He's also an expert in appealing your property tax assessment. He sits on the Grand Rapids Planning Commission, and he's also a successful real estate investor. Tom, thank you very much for joining us today.
Great, thanks. Good to be here, Brian.
Why don't we start with what you consider to be your primary business and talk about that a little bit, please.
My primary business is working with investors, whether they be just straight real estate investors or with landlords who want to add or they're divesting properties. Buying and selling real estate, every day is what I do. Helping others attain and reach their goals.
So, and talk about your company. You used to have your own company. Now
used to have my own company. We merged with Compass Realty Services. It's been a really good marriage. Mark Troy, the principal out there, wanted to get into real estate investing and working with landlords from a buy and sell standpoint in a big way. So we brought our business to him, and now we're utilizing his contacts in addition to contacts we already had, and it's working out really well.
As you say, your primary business is working with investors. So, and I know that you and your daughter Allison were you both voted the number one?
We
do you
were.
Share that prize?
Allison finished number 1 in 2015 for the most multi-unit sales. I was in the top 5. Together, we were the top real estate team for selling multi-properties in the Grand Rapids area.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you work with all kinds of investors. People come to you and they say, I want to buy a multifamily property.
Correct.
Talk about that process a little bit. What type of person, an investor, comes to you, and what kind of conversation do you have with them?
Well, if it's someone that's really not doing anything presently in real estate, someone who's what we might call new to it, the important thing is to sit down and find out exactly what it is they want to do. And sometimes that's helping them, get their thought process going, finding out what their goals are, what they're trying to do with their real estate investing. Are they trying to replace income? Are they just looking at a long-term investment that helps with their retirement? And from that, then formulating a plan of how to go after and purchase rental property, of which the first and foremost is the idea of what are you going to use for financing. No seller is going to be interested in talking to a buyer unless the buyer can first tell him how he's going to pay for the property. So that's often the first hurdle you have to get over with a new investor is where is the money going to come from, and what kind of financing are you going to use? Do you have cash? And then you get into more of the specifics of what they want to do. Are they looking to buy and flip? Are they looking to be buy and hold? So trying to get down and funnel into what it is they want to look at, what it is they want to purchase, And then further filtering that down even further into the area they want to buy in, what kind of tenants do they want to be working in, and then spread that out into more long-range goals, how many properties are they looking to put together. It saves a lot of time later to go through that, to let them focus their thinking, and then it gives us a more specific plan to work from.
What kind of investors are you talking to now, and what kind of properties are they looking for?
A lot of people that are just new and getting into the business, they usually fall into about two main categories. One would be buy and flip. They're looking to build up a cash reserve in order to be able to buy and fix and flip a couple of houses and build a pool of money, which then they can do their deals with cash. And the second group would be people that are looking for more of a long-term goal.
Buy and hold?
Buy and hold is what it would be called. Looking at putting together a portfolio that'll help in their retirement. The normal idea is try to get maybe 10 paid off rental properties that would, produce $5,000 to $6,000 in rents, a month in retirement, and being a big part of people's retirement.
And right now, it's early 2016. Well, what's a reasonable return to expect on that type of investment?
Probably between 10 and 15%. Until you get to the point where it's paid off, it's always difficult. Once you get it paid off, you ought to be able to be returning, 50 to 60% of your rents into, take home profit or money that can be used to pay your living expenses. Before that, when you've got the debt service there, it's a little bit more difficult, as repairs come up.
So to break it down a little differently, about your expense ratio on a property in Grand Rapids would be somewhere between 40 to 50%.
Correct.
If you have a loan on that property, the debt service is taking up probably another 25 to 30% of that income, which leaves you with anywhere from 15 to 25%.
Correct.
Of your rent at the end of the month that goes in your pocket.
Yep.
And based on what you put down, are you saying that 10 to 15% return can be expected just on a cash-on-cash basis?
Correct.
Okay. What kind of properties are we talking about? What kind of neighborhoods?
You're probably talking about average type neighborhoods. You're not really delving into the tougher neighborhoods, but you're also not in the real nice neighborhoods either. But you're in an average neighborhood that has good resale. Probably it's 50-50 owner-occupant and rental property. Quite often you're looking at a duplex, which is another thing that comes to mind. And then talking to a new person, the very first thing I always suggest is that they should buy a piece of rental property themselves to live in. And a duplex works really well for that, especially if they're renting right now. A good first property for them is something that they would live in the bottom and rent the top, and then move their investments forward from there.
How does that usually work out? I mean, can you still buy a duplex in Grand Rapids where you could live in one side, have a renter live in the other side, and their rent covers your mortgage? Yeah,
you can. You're looking at probably a duplex that sells in the $80,000-$90,000 range, so it can be a fairly nice property. And then you're the upstairs possibly renting for $800 to $850, and that's going to cover your mortgage and a good share of your expenses, maybe not all of your expenses. Yeah, you can live very cheaply though.
That's not bad at all. Mm-hmm. That's a great strategy to get started in investing.
Right.
I'd imagine a lot of the people who come to you are first-time investors.
Yeah, a lot of that. When you're working with someone who's done it before, they're usually working from a set cookie-cutter approach that they take, and it just the matter of that they put enough cash together to buy another one. And so I work with a lot of people with that on a repeat basis, mm-hmm. Where, if they're looking to buy one, we help them, or if they're looking to divest some or change something over and 1031 exchange into something different, we help a lot of people do that kind of stuff too.
What are some of the expectations that first-time buyers might have that you sometimes have to dispel them of?
How much it possibly, the first hurdle is always how much it'll cost them to get into their first property. With the way the banking system is these days, if you're going to be borrowing that money or getting a loan to buy a $100,000 property, a $100,000 duplex, you're probably going to have, if there are no repairs involved, as much as $35,000 cash ready to go by the time you pay your down payment and your closing costs to get into your first property. And that's always a surprise to them. I mean, too many people hear too much about no money down, and unfortunately, it does still take money to make real estate happen.
Yeah.
The second thing would be where that property is, and usually where they want it to be and what they're willing to pay are usually two different things. So they think that they can, just because they see $60,000 properties out there, they think that that's going to be fine. When they get into $50,000 and $60,000 properties, they usually need some repairs or the furnace is shot. And they probably don't have the cash for repairs to do that kind of a thing. So really, they end up really having to look at something $80,000 or $90,000 to more fit their style or what they're comfortable with.
And sometimes if you're getting a loan, well, quite often if you're getting a loan, you're better off going for the $80,000, $90,000 duplex than the $50,000, $60,000 duplex where you're going to have to come up with cash to put in the new heater or the new roof.
Correct.
Yeah. Let's go back to the no money down thing, because I think a lot of people hear this no money down and, look, I've seen it happen before. I'm sure you've seen it happen before, but it's not typical.
Well, the only way to do things these days without any money of yourself would be to have a private investor, someone that's willing to believe in you and loan you the money that you need to bridge the gap between a loan, or maybe loan you all the money for your first project. And then you can do something with no money down. This might be a relative or somebody, most often it's somebody that you already know. But those situations are hard to put together. I think recently, over the last 5 or 6 years, you can now do it with a self-directed IRA. So if someone is willing to loan money out of their retirement program that they've got in stocks and can get the kind of return out of you that they'd like to have, then it's doable with a private investor, but you need to search for those people.
So no money down now, because no money down had very different meaning when I started investing. No money down now means finding someone else to put up the money so that none of your money is down on the property.
Yeah, no money down in the past, and I did some loans like this. You'd buy a rental property for $100,000, and you'd get two loans. You'd get one loan that they were going to do at 75% loan to value at a certain interest rate, maybe get $75,000 there, and the other $25,000 you'd borrow from the same bank, but at probably about 2 points higher, and it'd be a second loan, and you'd sometimes even go to closing and end up getting cash back out of a closing. And that's a true no money down program, but that's what created 2008. And banks don't do loans like that any longer.
Yeah, banks are a lot more cautious. Or you get the bank to take the first, and then people would get the owner to hold a note for the second.
You could get the owner to hold the note for the second also.
Yeah. But you don't really see that.
I don't see much of that out there.
Yeah, interesting. That's part of your professional career. There is the brokering, and you now work with Compass.
Correct.
And if someone wanted to reach you for your services, they could reach you through Compass. And I'll also have a link to contact you if you're okay with that.
Sure.
On the website. Yep. Why don't we talk about some of the classes that you teach for the RPOA?
At the RPOA, I teach two classes. One, very simply, it's buying and selling rental property. And it's a very good class for somebody new in the business. It takes you through the process of buying and selling a rental property. What are the things to look out for? What are the how to structure the deal and how to find properties. It answers questions about title work, inspections, disclosures. All the things to be aware of as you go through the process. And that cloud course is fairly straightforward. I've been teaching that for, 10 or 12 years anyway. The other class that I teach at the RPOA is something I developed because I was doing it in about 2007, and that's how to appeal your property taxes. There are a very good way to make your property return more in a year or to gain a better bottom line is to make sure that you aren't paying any unnecessary property taxes. Municipalities value properties, and then your property tax that you pay is based on that. And if the value is out of whack with reality or the rest of the neighborhood that you're in, the municipalities, cities, townships you are free by law to appeal those property taxes and bring good reasons forward why you are assessed too high. And if you can lower that assessment, you can lower the property taxes that you can pay. I've seen it used to such an extent, especially when you might be rehabbing a property that's in bad condition, that you can save as much as $1,000, $2,000 on a property, maybe a bigger 4-unit. But that's $100 a month that you can save in your property taxes if you're overvalued. Then there's some very easy ways to look at that and figure that out. But the fun part of it is that you really get to look at your property from the standpoint of what is this property really worth? And if you think it is overvalued, you look at things like condition, maybe rental history, and location, and all the things that might be negative to that property being as valuable to you as they think it is. And that might be the rents that are coming in too. But you line out all those points, you get to go to the board of review hearing, present that to them, and then they make a determination on whether you're right or not. I've probably appealed, well over 1,000, probably pushing 2,000 properties in the last 10 years. And we have about 85% successful in getting some kind of savings, taking it through the whole process. So my pocket or their pocket, I believe in paying taxes, but I only believe in paying my fair share of taxes. And to do that, sometimes it takes a little bit of work and looking at that. And as long as they're going to let you appeal, then taking a chance on that and trying to convince them that the value is lower than what they've got it listed at.
So someone who would take your course through the RPOA, they would learn to determine how properties are taxed, whether their properties are overtaxed, and then you'll show them step by step what they need to do.
Take them through step by step to right through from an assessor's review on to the board of review and on to the state tax tribunal level of whatever they need to do to get the fairest hearing possible on getting their property taxes lowered. They'll see examples of actual appeals that were done. Big question and answer. We'll handle some small points. We'll get into all the things to look for, some things that help more than others. You can't just go in there and say, geez, my taxes are too high. You've got to present them with really good, solid reasons why my taxes are too high. And they are reasonable people. When you're talking to the assessors across Kent County, found them to be very reasonable. They certainly they work for the cities and municipalities, townships where they are, and so they're very concerned about tax dollars coming in, because in a lot of times in a township, that might be 80% of their revenue might be coming to them from property taxes. So they guard it closely, but if they're off and you can show good reasons, they're very willing to adjust it and be fair about it.
Well, I especially know during the downturn, they were still being quite aggressive on the valuations, the assessments.
Correct.
And I definitely appealed some of my taxes and had some success doing so.
Right. I would dare say we've, for the rental property that I've owned, we've appealed all of them, and some of them more than once. And I would say that probably today, because the neat thing about appealing your property taxes is you reset the values. And so you don't just save money on your taxes in the year that you appeal, but you've reset that assessed value so that you save money year after year after year after year. With the way that probably we've cut half of our tax dollars in half, I would say it's scary, but it's probably been worth $100,000 to me, just in the last 6-8 years.
Yeah, that's
savings.
a considerable amount of money right there.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your properties, because you're also an investor.
Correct.
And you have a portfolio. I was wondering if you mind talking about the type of properties you invest in and what your strategy is.
Well, I think like every investor that that strategy has changed over time. When I'm working with people, or when I'm even looking at my own investments, I really try to do and take what the market's going to give me. There was a time in the very beginning when I started investing, like around 2000, where the place to be was in multi-units and buy and hold properties. And so that's what we were buying in the beginning. Then the 2008 recession came along, the foreclosure crisis. It really opened up some opportunities in single-family houses. So there were a couple of years there where we bought, I think we bought 6 one year, we bought 11 one year, and just they were there for the taking. Then the money dried up with banks, it's kind of the next phase of that whole recession. But they were very willing to refinance, and they were offering some very good terms. So we took some of the loans that we had and refinanced from 30-year loans into 15-year loans. And with the lower interest rate involved, we were able to get the payment would stay the same, and we lopped off 15 years of the payment. So
wow.
That's what the banks were giving you at the time. Brings you around to today, and what's happening today is I think you're back almost to that buy and hold strategy is the best place to be. Inventory is very low. It's hard to find houses that work real well for fix and flip because there's so low inventory that it's you're competing with the owner-occupied person for houses before that you wouldn't have, that would have been strictly investor. And an owner-occupant's always willing to pay more than an investor is for a property. So that's competition you really can't deal with. So I've kind of followed that in my career. I followed what the market was giving you, and then we bought things, accordingly. Here recently, we haven't done quite as much, focusing more on plowing income and profit back into the properties and paying down those loans even faster. Working on
managing the assets you already own.
Managing the assets that we already own. There's not a big need for now. We have sold a couple here to readjust our portfolio. The ones that's doing the worst, we kind of quite often we'll put that one up for sale in a year, and then we'll look at the next lowest one, and then try to, if not 1031 exchange, then the next thing we buy, because we don't necessarily want less properties right now, but we constantly want better properties. So we're not trying to necessarily grow the number we are trying to grow the sum total of our investment.
And the types of properties, are we talking single families, duplexes? I mean, how big and how small do you get?
Pretty much we buy either duplexes or single families.
Mostly in the Grand Rapids area?
Mostly in the Grand Rapids area, yep.
So I'm wondering if you have any perspective. You've kind of taken us from 2000 to today. I'm wondering if you have a perspective on what the future might hold.
Oh, of course I do. I've got my opinions on that. I really think you're going to see the best, and this isn't all me. I mean, I do a lot of reading. I like to stay up on where the market, I'd like to stay about 6 months ahead of where I think things are going to really be. And that allows me to provide good advice and good counsel for people that I'm working with too. But I see interest rates continuing to rise. I think you're going to see 3 or 4 increases in the interest rate throughout 2016 and early 2017. I would think by this time next year we'll be looking at about a point higher. And I think what that'll do is it will get some people off the spot. If they're sitting and waiting, they're going to come to the conclusion that, of course, with the media there, 0.25% looks to people like a insurmountable topic. But interest rates are still very low, even though they did just take it up a 0.25 point. But even at a point higher, I think it's going to convince some people who are sitting on the fence to say, well, I better buy now before it gets too much higher.
Homeowners and investors, or more so homeowners? I
think both, but I think homeowners, mainly. And that's going to add more pressure to the marketplace. What we're at right now is we're in a very low inventory situation. So that creates some competitions that normally aren't there. I mentioned it before about the owner-occupant and the investor competing for the same properties. What you run into is you run into a danger when that inventory gets low that the whole market will stagnate. You've got Grand Rapids right now as a booming, economy, and you've got new things going on, and the medical mile wants to add talent, and there's other big employers in town. There's a lot of colleges that, adding professors and everything. But if that talent can't come to Grand Rapids and find suitable housing like where they came from, or of a type that they want to live in, or an area that they want to live in, if there aren't that many things to choose from, then you're going to end up with a situation where they're not coming. If they don't have a place for their family to live, they're not going to be able to come to Grand Rapids. And that's an extreme situation, and there's nothing's carved in stone that it's all one way or all the other, but that does kind of begin to happen. And if inventory is too low and the market stagnates, then investors will really be closed out. There'll always be a little bit of movement, but investors will be really closed out. But that's a real danger in stifling the, economic progress, of a progressive city like Grand Rapids, where so many great things are going on.
Well, and I think that leads perfectly into my next question, and it has to do with your relationship with the Grand Rapids Planning Commission. Are you still a member?
I'm a Grand Rapids Planning Commission member, yes.
Okay,
City of Grand
perfect.
Rapids.
So you have good insight into what's coming down the pike.
Correct.
In Grand Rapids, and I'm wondering if you're able to talk about some of that.
Well, I think the prognosis in the future for Grand Rapids and the way city planners are looking at it is that there is going to be a real need for housing, focused as much in the downtown area as anywhere. And the developers in the city are certainly rising to that occasion. Many, many projects have been approved.
Yeah, over 1,000 units coming online.
I would say about 1,000 units will be ready by the end of 2016, and then probably at least that many in 2017. And my numbers are probably a little bit low. The GR Forward program that just got completed, and I'm not sure if it got city commission approval yet, but that calls for 5,000 new dwellings in the downtown area over the next 3 to 4 years.
Wow!
Just to satisfy the need for housing downtown, and for housing to service everything that's going up. I mean, things that are going up, there's 2 motels going up downtown Grand Rapids. Both of those need employees to staff them. It certainly creates good amount of work for the construction companies, the construction workers. And those jobs are all great. All those jobs then bring housing, new people moving in. Many positive things going on in Grand Rapids. But there's always the possibility of that being a danger too. As there's a shortage of housing, then the building trades rise to meet that, and housing gets built, apartment complexes get built, both from the affordable side and the market rate side. to the tune that you get to the point where one wonders, what's the maximum of that? When does that start putting pressure on, or when do vacancies start? Right now in City of Grand Rapids, as all landlords are well aware, the vacancy rate is probably under 1%.
I think our occupancy rate is just above 98%.
Correct. But as you add more and more units to that mix, and people get their needs satisfied as far as housing, and because tenants right now, in all kinds of areas, are reluctant to move out of the rental property they're in based on the fact, well, what am I going to be able to find? It's really, tough out there to find good quality housing without, really doing a thorough search. So I think it's going to raise the overall price of rental property also, all this new development coming on board. Market rate apartments, just within the city, or what's going up on Wealthy in Michigan, in this area, market rate, you're looking at, they go for about $800 a bedroom. You're talking about a 2-bedroom apartment, renting for $1,600. A lot of our landlords with the RPOA, that's big money. I mean, most often, if they get $950 for a 2-bedroom apartment, that's pretty good. But rents are on the way up, and
well, it seems like, and maybe you can help answer this question for me. It seems like a lot of the new product that's coming online downtown, it's either new build or completely gutting and rehabbing older buildings. And a lot of the units that you see being built are A-class units, in that they have the granite countertops, the high-end finishes, and they're going after that top market rate rent. Mm-hmm. So it seems like after a while, if you're concerned about overbuilding, I would be more concerned about there being too many of those types of properties, as opposed to the properties that are more affordable to people, where people can rent.
Well,
do you
this
have
was
a perspective on that?
What you're talking about was identified, and we just went through a process here in Grand Rapids. It was spearheaded by the city commission members. One that I worked closely with was Ruth Kelly. The Great Housing Strategies got together, and concerned individuals were asked to come forward. I served on a committee. I served on the zoning committee, looking for ways to make housing in Grand Rapids more affordable, find more affordable alternatives. And it was pretty wide-reaching as far as what kind of assistance is available to people, what kind of incentives might be available to builders. And what you're going to see come out of this is some encouragement by the city of Grand Rapids through incentives and enhancements to developers to build more affordable housing units. And it'll happen. As the developers certainly don't want to build something that they're not going to be able to rent. So as they see some of the things you're bringing out, that there's too much market rate out there, they will turn to the affordable. But again, you've got to make sure that they are going to be able to cover, their construction costs, and that the investors are going to, be able to get their return on investment out of these projects. So that's going to take some incentive, and I'm not necessarily advocating or talking about a whole bunch of tax breaks for them, but incentives for density, for height, for giving number of parking places, that kind of thing, parking being an issue. And the less parking they have to put into a development, the more beneficial it is to them. The less overall dollars they have to put in. So that's a big incentive for them. But yeah, most of them. And then the affordable housing stuff should also have retail on the bottom or whatever. It ought to be attracting businesses.
So you're looking at
the area.
Mixed use
right.
housing.
Yep. And the whole thing about downtown has to do with density and making it more advantageous for business to come to town, which is restaurants or a grocery store or retail. And it's almost a return to what the downtowns were in the 30s and 40s and 50s before there was the move to the suburbs. And that's what a lot of this building is about, and the density and the whole turnaround downtown Grand Rapids, and this certainly isn't the only place that's happening.
So how long do you think it will be before we actually do see a grocery store downtown?
That's an interesting question. People almost have that earmarked as a goal.
Yeah, I've heard Derek Koppes from 616 has said 10,000 is the magic number. Once you have 10,000 people living downtown, is that kind of the going number?
Yeah, it's an idea of density that are they going to be able to have enough customers that are going to be on a walk-in basis that are going to be able to turn. Again, it's not going to be anything, in my opinion, it's not going to be anything that looks like a Meijer store out on the East Beltline. It's going to have to be something that really is within walking distance, and it might be something that's 2 stories. I just see it as a little different kind of a grocery store, or maybe it's got more of the look of I think a Trader Joe's or something downtown. And you see those downtown Detroit, downtown Chicago. That's where Trader Joe's is, and that might be the kind of grocery store that you're really going to attract, because the people that are living downtown are the kind of people that really are, a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods kind of.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Oh, I've been into the 2-story Whole Foods in it's either New York or Chicago.
Okay.
It's quite an experience to be in a 2-story grocery store. And what about parking? I mean, that seems to be a big issue lately.
Well, parking is it is an issue. You need to have a certain amount, or people aren't going to be able to come. There's another whole contingent out there that feels that we probably have too much parking downtown, that there isn't a need for any more asphalt jungles, so to speak, with big parking lots and that kind of thing. There are quite a few. We need to make, I think, better use of our parking downtown, and remember that there's a certain person that's going to use parking downtown during the day, but a lot of that sits vacant or not being used at night. So what's the best mix for that kind of thing? People developing things and putting up some of the ones that are doing the big remodels, where they're turning some of the bigger, older warehouse type buildings or older hotels downtown into now apartments. That's one of the biggest things they have to solve. I mean, some are going down and putting parking garages underneath. But a lot of times when people live downtown, you talk to New Yorkers or you talk to people that have always lived downtown Chicago, they don't see a need for a car. Some of what they need
it's just prohibitive. It's way too expensive to
absolutely
even have a car.
It doesn't make any sense to them. And if they are going away for a long way for a weekend, I mean, they carpool with someone, or that you rent a car and it's cheaper than owning a car. Just from the idea of where you've got to pay for the park. So I think we'll solve the parking issue and find that equilibrium downtown. It's constantly being discussed, with the city. And it's a big issue and a big part of these developments.
All right. Well, hey, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and share all your knowledge and experience. I'm sure I'll have you back at some point to elaborate more specifically on a particular issue. But thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Brian, for all your work that you put into this, too. It's really going to be good.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.